Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Indian Lawyers Association webinar this evening or this morning. We'll talk about the Air India crash. It's unfortunate that we are having to talk about it, but it's part of life, and there is a tragedy happened. Now we want to know what are the legal rights and remedies of the people, of the victims that suffered. So we have a wonderful panel. Shyamli Shukla from Maheshwari and Company, Sarosh Damania, founder of Sarosh Damania and Company, Yeshwant Shenoy, who's president of Kerala High Court, Ramandeep Bawa, founder of RDB Associates, and Pradeep Rai, senior advocate, Supreme Court of India. Thank you, panelists, for joining. So, Ramandeep, I'm going to start with you. What is your take of the victims' rights and compensation under Indian law for the victims that suffered because of the Air India crash?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, esteemed attendees. Thank you for joining this seminar to address the tragic Air India AI-17 crash in Ahmedabad. On June 12, 2025, one of India's deadliest aviation disasters. As a speaker, my objective is to provide an exhaustive examination of the legal rights and entitlements available to the victims and the families. But before I start, I just want to give a little brief of the whole incident that happened, of this tragic incident that happened. On June 12, 2025, an Air India flight AI 171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner en route to London, crashed shortly after taking off from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. The local time was 1:39 noon. The aircraft was carrying 242 individuals, out of which 169 were Indian nationals, 53 were British nationals, and 7 Portugal nationals and 1 Canadian national. 12 crew members were along in the aircraft. The aircraft lost altitude and plummeted into the Megnani Nagar area, striking a medical college and surrounding buildings. The impact intensified by 125,000 liters of fuel, caused a massive explosion and fire, killing 241 on board and only one sole survivor, who was, I believe, was a British national, Mr. Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. The crash also claimed life from former Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Vijay Rupani. So before we discuss the legal rights and all, I would want to start with the jurisdictions. So I would want to discuss here what are the jurisdictions. I mean, where all can these claims be filed? The jurisdictions, as given by the jurisdiction for filing these claims under Article 33 of the Montreal Convention and Chapter 3 of the Schedule 1 of Carriage by Air Act. The plaintiffs can file these claims in different areas, but it's very important to understand where do they start. I mean, it is like planting a seed, and you get a fruit later. But one wrong step, your whole claim and all, everything can go for a task. So this is very important to understand how do we start this whole litigation or the whole legal process in whichever country you're based on. First of all, it is the country of destination and departure, right? In this case, the country of destination was UK. So the claims can be filed in either UK or the place of departure, which was India, Gujarat, or Gujarat would be one of the cities, or the airline's principal place of business, which I've been told is Gurgaon, Haryana, India. The claims can be filed in either of these places. Also, now, third point which has to be covered for jurisdiction is the deceased place of residence. If the airline operates in that jurisdiction, the claims have to be filed in 2 years. If you pass these 2 years, you cannot file. You'll not be entitled to any such compensation by the airlines or by any court. I mean, the court will not come to your rescue. The timeline is very important. You can also file these claims at the residence of the passenger. I mean, 7 Portuguese nationals. I mean, you can file them. This only, but the Portuguese nationals can file them in Portugal. Not like someone being from UK or Canada, as there was the other passengers. They can't file it over there thinking the claim would be higher, so I'll also file in Portugal. Not because I'm not a national, but I still have a You can't do that. Only a national of the Portuguese uh, citizenship can file a claim over there. Secondly, now I would want to understand, I would want everyone to understand that who all can file for these compensations. I mean, as you know, the people are dead. I mean, the deceased passengers, they're no more. So, who has the right on their behalf to file for these compensations? The legal heirs or dependents of the deceased can file for compensation. In case of injury, the passenger themselves can. The amount depends on the proof of damage or loss. In cases like the Air India flight AI 171 crash, families of Indian victims can also seek remedies to consumer forums under Consumer Protection Act 2009, which provides an additional avenue for relief alongside the protection offered by the Montreal Convention 1999 as incorporated into the Carriage by Air Act 1972. For families of foreign passengers, legal recourse is not limited to India, as we discussed earlier right now. Given the near universal applicability of the Montreal Convention, they have the option to file lawsuits in their home countries where the compensation standards may be more favorable or higher. Now, coming out after discussing the jurisdiction and who all can claim for this compensation, the most important part which comes is to discuss the legal rights. I mean, what are the legal rights of the family members, the deceased people, and the most important part which I want to start is with discussing the Montreal Convention, which is the which is the cornerstone of compensation rights in these cases. The legal framework governing the Air India flight AI 171 crash is multifaceted, encompassing international treaties, Indian statutes, and institutional support mechanisms. For the 241 deceased passengers, the Montreal Convention of 1991, ratified by India, is the cornerstone of compensation rights. These treaty standardizes airlines' liability for international flights, ensuring equitable treatment for all passengers regardless of nationality. The Montreal Convention applies in many situations, including delays, cancellations, overbooking, injury caused as a result of flight, loss, and damage to life. What is crucial is that the convention only applies to international flights, not to domestic flights. Only if the flight is an international flight, it will be applicable. It does not cover domestic flights that are flying within one country. As per the flight Air India AI 171, which was en route to London, this whole treaty will be applicable as it was an international carrier. But there are very two key aspects of this Montreal Convention. There are two very important points I want to discuss. Is Article 17 and Article 21. Article 17, is a very detailed provision in this agreement says that what will be covered, and Article 21 tells the procedure what would be the amount of compensation. The Montreal Convention. So Article 17 says that as per Article 17 of Montreal Convention, Air India is liable to death for bodily injury if the accident occurred on board or during embarking, disembarking, covering all 241 passengers. The carrier is liable for damage sustained because of death or bodily injury of the passenger upon condition that the accident which caused the death or injury took place on board the aircraft or in the course of any operation of embarkation. The aircraft, as per this article, is also liable for damage contained in case of destruction loss and baggage and if while checking in and checking out if the damage is if your luggage is damaged, so the aircraft will have to the airlines will have to cover this whole the damage. Article 21 describes the mode of compensation. It is the formula on what basis this compensation is calculated. Article 21 establishes a strict liability limit, special drawing rights, which we refer as SDR. So, one SDR, just for the audience, I would want to tell you one SDR, the current value of one SDR as on today is 121.93 rupees. One SDR would be 121.93 rupees in India. The SDR per passenger limit, which Article 21 ensures, is 1 lakh 28 gauge 21 SDR and thereafter 1 lakh 51 880 SDR from October 18th to 24 onwards. As of June, SDR trading is, as I mentioned, because roughly means the compensation would be around 2 lakh 13,648 US dollars based on 220, based on higher rates without requiring proof of fault. families may claim higher amounts of proving negligence, such as maintaining failures or pilot error through different systems. These are the basic, because of the shortage of time, and there are other people waiting. There are these limited points which I would just gather, which would like to help you all understand. How can these victims, the survivors of these family members of the passengers can claim compensation? Where is the point? Which courts do they have to look for? And this will at least throw some light, because this is one topic which is not very touched in India. This airline crash and all is not very common sight. It happened way back in 1988. An Air India flight had again crashed in 1988, and the passengers, which had the family members of passengers, are still, some of them are still fighting in court. I mean, the litigation is still going on. But it was basic. It was a step which no one knew at that point of time, and after that, nothing of this sort happened. So that people are still lawyers. I mean, I also had to go through many points to read. I mean, what are the steps? And I was I had just read about the Montreal Convention. I had to read it very deeply after this whole incident. I mean, what are the steps that have to be taken? After reading all these articles and going through these points, I've made some points which I think it might highlight, and it might help the institutions, if they listen, that these 9 points which are made, they might they might be a little bit of a helping hand or a relief.
Yeah, send
The
it to
nine
us.
points.
We'll post it on the Indian Lawyers Association website for
Yeah,
the.
I just mentioned the points briefly. I
Okay.
mean, the very just take a minute or so. The points which are made are: reinforce regulatory independence and oversight, foster a just culture through legal modernization, institutionalize robust safety management systems, build domestic investigation capacity, streamline victims' compensation and support, clarify third-party liability, enable target legal reform, strengthen communication and transparency, invest in human resources and international. So these are the
Wonderful.
9 points which I just thought of the ministry or the aviation or DGCA. These points will be made up to them, and more research and more thought can be given to this. It might be a little beneficial, and God forbid something like this happens in the future. So
Right.
this might be.
And maybe we need to revisit the entire personal injury arena in the country. And I think a lot of people deserve compensation that they're not getting. But thank you, Ramandeep, so much. You give us a broad overview of the entire process, which will help me now nitpick on details with the other speakers. So I'll start in reverse alphabetical order. Since Yeshwant, you were never called in class, since you, by the time the teacher got to MNOP, the class was over. So Yeshwant, let's say I had a family member, let's say I had a parent die in the Air India crash, and I come to you and say, Yeshwant, what can I do? Um, the loss I had is irreplaceable, but I heard there is some compensation. Guide me, advise me, what should I do?
Uh, Sir, just to start with, in the sense that we heard about the Montreal Convention, but from the practical side, I've dealt with the Mangalore air crash, thereafter the Calicut air crash. Mangalore was 2010, Calicut was 2020. Uh, in the real courtrooms, you will never hear the words Montreal Convention. In the real courtrooms in India, you will not hear the words Montreal Convention, though we may take it, but ultimately, even if Carriage by Air Act brings in uh, uh, substantially what is there in Montreal Convention, when it comes to real courtroom battles, what they're looking at is the Indian laws. Basically, in the Mangalore air crash, I got probably the highest compensation for a death at around 7.5 crores, and with interest it came to about 11.5 crores. That was the highest uh, claim ever granted in India. So, and let me tell you, it was given on the basis of Sarla Verma, which is a accident, the motor accident case formula. So, and then you ask me a very simple question: if somebody approaches, how do you go about it? Now, in Mangalore air crash, I had two cases. Both cases, I have got orders of. In the case of passenger, I said Supreme Court finally disposed it off with about 7.5 crores plus interest. But I also took up the case for the pilot, the Serbian pilot. So that I took to the labor court, and the passengers case I took it to the consumer court. So, and now from Ghatkopar crash, I had taken something to the Bombay High Court. So, if you ask me why different courts, depending on uh, several set of facts. For example, the number of dependents, where they are located, how easy it is for them to control the proceedings. So all this goes into it before we decide where to head on. Now, I will also point out that I am certain that already there would be American and European lawyers in the ground in Gujarat already, and I have been contacted by a few of them because I have worked with them in the past. The unfortunate story is this: as long as there is a product liability that can be established uh, in an accident probe, uh, you have a better jurisdiction in the US, in the sense that ultimately it will go into a settlement and you will obviously get a lot more compensation than the traditional court systems in India. But the unfortunate part is the moment the accident report is out, if there is no product liability, these people vanish. And many of the victims would not even have approached the Indian courts. And this means they will be out of limitation as well. So that is one important aspect that needs to be taken care of. You have to be very, very careful about limitation, because most of the time the American lawyers and their Indian counterparts show carrots, and many people sign up. But the moment investigation report comes out, normally investigation report takes time. In India, it easily takes 2 years or 3 years. Some of those accident reports are not yet out, but I hope AI 171 investigation report will be out sooner. Uh, but the real story in India is like ultimately, whether it is through an aircraft, whether that is caused by an air crash or a road accident, the formula applies is the same. We have not looked at any different formula.
What is the
Second
formula?
one, it's the number of dependents. Again, there is a deduction for number of dependents, 2 to 4, then 4 to 6, and above 6. So 1/3, 1/4, and 1/5. This is the
And
deduction.
dependents includes spouse, kids, and parents.
Spouse, kids, and parents, and anybody. Fortunately, at least on dependence part, you only need to prove dependency. You don't need to prove legal heirship. For example, if you have an uncle that you've been taking care of while you are alive, he may not be a legal heir in its strict sense, but if you have proof and evidence to show that he was a dependent, then the courts will consider you as a dependent. But
Okay, so if there are 4 dependents or 6 or 8 or 10, is that number multiplied by 1 rupee amount?
no, uh, from the total salary, what happens, or the total income, when you calculate the total income, what happens is the court says that you have to deduct his personal uh, expenditure. So that depends upon the number of dependents. So the lesser the number of dependents, the higher you are going to spend on yourself. This is the logic the Indian courts have given. So technically, what helps compensation matter in India is increasing the number of dependents.
Okay. So the 7.5 crore judgment, was that a judgment or a settlement?
It was a judgment.
Okay. So is that public? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, it is public. It is Triveni Portkani versus Air India.
So how did you get 7.5 crores? So our listeners can, some very young lawyers have joined so that they can learn. So how did you get to 7.5 crore, roughly 30,000 feet view?
Uh, it was because this particular passenger, this particular victim was working in the United States. No, UAE, in Middle East. This means that he had no tax. So his salary component was higher. And again, this is where I am pointing out that there were ESOPs and everything. The company had given a letter. All of these things were there, but Indian courts did not consider all of these aspects. Though in the Supreme Court, they said that you could have led evidence as regards ESOP, but it was an admitted fact because the company itself had given a letter as these there is salary breakup and all those things, but that was never considered by the Indian courts. And if you were talking about road accidents also, and you had this thing, but there is a primary problem with the Indian judiciary. I would like to point it out. The whole idea of unjust enrichment that has fallen into our judiciary, that on that somebody should not unjustly enrich themselves, is absolutely wrong and feudal thinking. Absolutely wrong and feudal thinking. It's a case of death. When the only earning member of the family goes, even if you're giving him 10 crores or 20 crores, not more, because you are taking away not just a source of income, but a source of confidence. But all these things are not at all of concern for the Indian judiciary. And what it has led to is this: the cost of prevention. The cost of prevention is always higher in India than the cost of compensation. And therefore, I have no incentive to prevent. Imagine if I have to invest 200 crores in, say, to ensure safety. But even if I pop off, say, 200 lives, if my compensation is less than 50 crore, why would I spend 200 crores bettering the systems? Be it
So
railways.
Yeshwant, who was the judgment against the 11 crores, and did they get paid?
Yeah, they got paid because it was Air India, and the insurers immediately take care of it.
They did not
So,
file an appeal?
no, we went all the way to Supreme Court. They will take you to the last court. Take it from me. They will take you to the last possible court. And the pilot's case is pending now in the Supreme Court. It is coming up in July for argument.
Okay. Uh, I have 100 more questions of you, but hang in there. Let's hear from others, and I'll come back to you.
I would like to put in some last words before going, because uh, after Mangalore air crash, though I was asked by the client only for compensation, the moment I saw the state of affairs, I couldn't stop myself. So I went beyond my duty, and till date, I have filed more than 15 public interest litigations in Bombay High Court, in the Supreme Court, in the Delhi High Court, in the Kerala High Court. I have specifically warned about the safety systems in the aviation system, the breach of aviation regulation. You just have to type my name, Google it, you will find all of it. The
Okay.
fact is this: I don't consider this as an accident. Accident is something that you uh, cannot forewarn. But this was graphically written by me in my PIL. The system, the aviation system in India has completely collapsed. And AI 171 is not going to be the last. It's not going to be the last. I'm sorry to say this so bluntly, but Bombay airport is much more dangerous than any other airport in India today. So I have gone beyond my professional duty in the sense that the only question I ask myself is this: if there is a safe place for an aircraft to crash, it is only the airport. There is no other safe place for an aircraft to crash except when Captain Sully lands it in Hudson River. That's a extremely rare occasion. But when you cannot save lives, even when the aircraft has crashed inside an airport, it shows something is seriously wrong with your safety systems. In Mangalore, the aircraft crashed inside the airport, and still we lost 158 people, and there were only 166 on board. That means we saved only 8 lives. If you take worldwide accident statistics, you will not see any accident where almost all on board die when a crash has happened inside the airport, except for one Indonesian crash where the aircraft went and hit a fuel tanker and exploded. But other than that, whenever an aircraft has crashed inside an airport, uh, maybe one or two deaths, but everybody on board are saved except Mangalore air crash. Even in Calicut, which was an exact photocopy of Mangalore, we could have prevented it. The aircraft investigation is not to bring about the liability or point out the liability. Aircraft investigation is carried out to see how can we prevent a future one. And after Mangalore, when the report was out, and in Calicut you had absolute similar crash, we need serious questions to be asked, because even in Calicut you had 20 deaths. And why it was 20 deaths? Because fuel tanks got empty. There was no fuel in the tanks for it to burn. If there was fuel, the result of Calicut would have been different.
Are you allowed to take matters on a contingency basis on these air crashes?
No, in India, unfortunately, there is this contingency fees is not allowed. That is where we have serious issues. In the US, but what happens when the US lawyers come is they take the matter on contingency basis. So most of them sign it. That is
Yeah,
where I
well,
point out.
the purpose of law is to protect the poor and the powerless from the rich and the powerful and the government. And the only way the poor and powerless have access to power is through contingency lawyers, or access to justice is through contingency lawyers. But any country that's going to ban contingency lawyering has a big glaring neon sign outside the country that reads "No justice for the poor in this country."
You are
So I
absolutely
don't know
right.
what we're waiting for, but
No, you are absolutely right. That is where I said we need something to change drastically the judicial system of the country, and that is feudal thinking. We have not lost the colonial relics in the in our judicial institutions. You know, this whole idea of unjust enrichment. Why is it that somebody cannot be compensated adequately just because the figure looks very huge? You know, when you stand in the Supreme Court, like when I was waiting for my matters, this particular matter in the Supreme Court, I was like blown out in the sense that compensation for death is something as cheap as 8 lakhs and 4 lakhs. And even that, the judges were thinking as if they were doing a big charity. I have no idea how can you even value a human life at 8 lakhs and 10 lakhs. 8 lakhs and 10 lakhs. And that
so
too, the
Yeshwant,
judges.
how do you become law minister of India? Let's work on that.
Uh,
Because
let me put it this way. It's not just the law minister. Law ministers still have to struggle winning an election. But one of the former judges said, you know, you dream to be a district judge, you dream to be a magistrate, you know the path. You have to write an exam, you have to pass through, and you go through. But if you ask, if somebody tells me I want to be a high court judge, uh, I have no answer to give because there is no test, there is nothing. It's a collegium system which takes you out from nowhere and makes you a judge. So these are serious things that needs to be taken care of, and Indian judiciary requires a lot of reform. Even
so
before
where do you live now?
I am right now in Kerala. I'm the president of the Kerala High Court Advocates Association. Again, that happened out of a chance. Uh, but
Kerala, where?
At Cochin, Ernakulam.
Would you please think about becoming president of ILA Kochi, please, for us?
We will. I can consider it, but as you said, the you know, uh, as you said, you have struggled the most to have an advocates association in India than any other place in the world, and I can tell you that running an advocate association itself is a task which is already formed and ready, and there's a procedure and process going on. It's very tough to carry everybody together because
Yeah.
too many things.
But Yeshwant, you were not sent on this planet to do easy things in life. So let's move on. Let's take care of the hard things. The hard things can be very simple, and I we should all be involved in a project that we know will not be done by the time we are here on this planet. So if it takes time, it takes time. We're here. It takes 50 years, it takes 50 years. But we got to do it. Right? We have to do it. Thank you so much. Hang around if you can.
I would take your leave because I have to leave. And thank you so much for inviting me and sharing my thoughts on it.
Yeshwant, the term is only 1 year. Please become president. Help us set up Kochi. We had a chapter there 4 or 5 years ago. Let's revive it. Thank you so much.
Certainly, sir. We'll be in touch, sir.
So Shyamli, what is your take on the Montreal Convention? And Yashwant was saying that when you go to court in India, nobody wants to listen to Montreal Convention. But that's because he was talking about Calicut and Bangalore crashes. But this is an international crash, right? So doesn't Montreal Convention apply? And what does it mean? And what do I have to do practically if I'm one of the victims? Uh, which court do I go to? Do I argue Montreal Convention? What is the statute of limitation? Like Yeshwant was saying, that if you don't file it on time, then we're going to lose out. So give us your thoughts.
Hi, I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot for inviting me, having me here, giving me this opportunity to discuss all of this with my fellow uh, industry. Would be very much interested in understanding. So, Mr. Bawa was talking about the Montreal Convention, and he has rightly pointed out all details that there is always like when we talk about airline crashes or plane crashes in India, going there are rights involved for people who are not Indian citizens, who are not Indian citizens. So in such cases, how and what we should do about it. So I went into the Google, I did my part of the research. But, having said that, because I have been working on the other side of the companies having taking.
You're breaking, Shamli. We can't hear you. Swati, can you hear?
No, sir. I think there is some issue. My voice is dropped. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Shamli, we can't hear you. Can you log out and log in again?
Yeah, please. I'll do that. I'll you can continue with other panelists. I'll just go out and hop back in.
Okay. We'll have your question pending. So, Sarosh, so can you shed some light if a victim of the Air India crash comes to you and says, what can you do to help me? What's your answer? And what is a few steps you would take to ensure that the victim is compensated?
The ideal situation first is that as per the Montreal Convention, of course, everybody is discussing Montreal Convention and how the compensation comes into an aviation crash. Now we have to understand that India is also signatory to various treaty conventions. A lot of things has flown into the Indian law. So the Carriage by Air Act, which has been derived in India, flows from the Montreal Convention. So there is already an Indian statute which consists of the compensation what is stated in the Montreal Convention. So it is not that you have to go to Indian courts and argue Montreal Convention as such, because there is the Carriage by Air Act, which is derived from the Montreal Convention, which has the same amount of compensations in SDR. So there is a Indian statute which is already there in place, which takes care of your issue and deriving from the Montreal Convention. That is rightly said in Indian courts. Now see, I do a lot of aviation law matters. I represent airlines also, passengers also. There is a ground level issue that a lot of Indian courts won't understand aviation law. Aviation law has been a very out subject, or it's a very narrow subject where a lot of people are not aware of it. So same thing, because compensation rights are not clear that what is compensation to be paid by. Now, of course, there are two types. One is, this is a basic compensation which is guaranteed under the Montreal Convention, which flows through the Carriage by Air Act in India. So that comes up to around, and of course, Air India, on the day after, next day of the crash itself, they have declared that they are going to pay 1 crore compensation to each victim. So of course, that declaration was, of course, they wanted to time it right to show that they are generously giving it off. But it was no generous offer, or it was no voluntary thing. It was a mandate of the law that they had to declare it. So they just try to take a good opportunity of the law and show that they are going to pay the passengers 1 crore each compensation. But of course, it was just a declaration. The compensation still has to come in. There is nobody has yet been paid. So of course that is, and any which way that 1 crore which is declared is also falls short of the Montreal Convention amount. The Montreal Convention SDR amount, when you convert it to Indian rupees, it approximately comes up to around 1.8 crore. So that is 80 lakh short what they have declared. But of course, this is an interim compensation. What they say has been declared. Thereafter, that is going to be reviewed. So ideal approach will be first be to take the compensation what the airline is providing. That is one thing, that because that you don't have to fight for that, you don't have to do much thing for that. But you always have to remember, the airlines will try to tie down the victims. They try to take declarations, no claim undertaking, indemnity from them regarding not filing any other cases, and etc. So that has to be very well thought of, and how will you accept that compensation? Apart from that, the only other way, there is no specific statute, or there is no specific tribunal, or there is no specific court for a victim to go and get compensation. Next remedy which is available is under the Consumer Protection Act. Now, under the Consumer Protection Act in India, you can claim compensation in addition to the compensation which is available under any statute. So there is where your loophole is, there is where your remedy lies, in addition to the compensation which the airline will maybe pay you under the Montreal Convention. But beyond that also, that is a basic compensation which is mandated, that much has to be given. But of course, in normal circumstances also, 1 crore, you cannot value a life at this figure. Now, what happens is, when you go to consumer court, again, airlines are going to contest that already compensation being paid on the Montreal Convention, so you cannot again give me a further compensation. But under the consumer law, it is in addition and not in derogation to the any other statute. So that is how you get the jurisdiction of it. And now, as we saw in the last, Yeshwant also spoke that the compensation is calculated as per the motor accident claim calculation. So the problem is, there is a lacuna in the statute, because we don't have any calculation for compensation for air crash victims, because there is no statute in place. So they are trying to take from a similar statute what can be done. And in the consumer courts also, now advantage of the 2019 Consumer Protection Act which is coming to India is that you can file, the consumer can file case at the place of his residence anywhere in India. So it doesn't need to only be the airline's office or the crash site, that is Ahmedabad. In India, you can, whichever city you live in across India, in the Consumer Protection Act, you have the jurisdiction to file a case in your own city. But of course, with the 2019 Act, we got this advantage of having filing the case in your own city. But one disadvantage which came in with was that enhancement of jurisdictions for the district forum. So now what has happened is earlier in the earlier act you used to be as per the compensation claim you could choose the tribunal. Now what has happened is you are going to choose as per the consideration paid. So max to max any person has paid a consideration. Even a business class traveler must have not paid more than 5 lakh rupees as ticket consideration. So what happens is you go straight away to the district forum. And as airlines are going to litigate this, they are not going to be easy on the passengers. So it is again a 3 tier, 4 tier hurdle to the till the Supreme Court to get the final compensation. So it's going to be a district forum, then going to be state commission, then going to be the national commission, and thereafter it might go to the Supreme Court where the finally the consumer is going to receive his compensation because the airlines are going to litigate because and understand one thing that airlines are not spending their own money for litigation in this. Airlines are insured. So they have insurance policies, they have the insurance companies fighting the litigations for them, they have the insurance companies paying the compensation for them. So it is not you are not putting in hand into the airline's pocket. So airlines are not bothered about the litigation because it is outsourced to third parties because the insurance companies takes care of it. The, to that much extent that even the lawyers are appointed by the insurance company for claims which are defended by the insurance company. So airlines are of course other thing which is at stake is there. Of course, the reputation is there. They don't want to set a bad precedent. So airlines are going to be continuously involved in it. But from a cost factor, it is only victim now. Victim also needs to, as you spoke, that the Indian judicial system doesn't permit on commission basis or sharing profits or sharing costs. So the victim has to put in his own hard-earned money into litigation, fight all the way up to the top. That is of course a very big disadvantage in the Indian judicial system. That has to be seen. Government has put in some legal aid. They have come out with it. But you have to understand that airlines are going to fight with top-notch lawyers. They are going to put in all their resources at hand. I don't know the legal aid lawyers which are there in India. I have nothing wrong about them, but to put a fight across to all these big lawyers with expertise in aviation knowledge and knowledge with all the conventions, because understanding there will be a lot of international law, there will be a lot of reliance on international competition standards, which has to be for any lawyer who has not done it is a difficult aspect. People who are involved in aviation, people who know about aviation law, about the international conventions, it is going to be easier for them to navigate through the channels. And apart from that, there is a hurdle of these difficult tribunals which are person has to go through all the way till the top to get the compensation. Because airlines are going to go in appeal, they are going to go very aggressively on the litigation because they are trying to set an example that if we stall one person, it sets the example that others won't come to court. So that is a very unfortunate thing. In such a situation, the airlines also should not do something like this. But that is the matter of fact. Now, the ground reality is it is going to be a very difficult uphill task in India for victims to claim compensation. Remedies are available. That is also very few, very narrow. There is no perfect guideline or there is no standard principle in a crash compensation which is set to the another issue is regarding the aircraft investigation. The investigation, what is going on? If you see the investigation, also what is going on is not going on track. You have seen ICAO, which is the international body on aircraft investigation, has raised issues with this particular investigation already. That there is no lead investigator appointed. Already, it's been 2 weeks for the crash. So we don't even have a lead investigator who has been declared by the government. So government also lackish attitude or government. And another thing in India is India has a closed investigation. Unlike the US, where US all crash aircraft investigations are open investigations. Whatever the findings are, they put it on their website. People get to know about it, what is happening. So during the course of the investigation, also people are aware of things, and accordingly, they can use that things to their advantage in a court or when they are filing for compensation. Unlike India, where it is a closed door investigation, where you till the final report doesn't come out, you will not be revealed things. Of course, there is going to be a preliminary report, but that is not going to be adequate for a person to maybe fight in court for compensation or show negligence or prove something. So that is another disadvantage in the Indian investigation system is that it is a closed door thing. So passengers have to wait. As said, sometimes it takes 2 years, 3 years to get the final report out. Now, unfortunately, the limitation period under the Montreal Convention is also 2 years. Under the Consumer Protection Act in India, also the limitation period is 2 years. So the victims have to file it within 2 years' time. So that is a problem. So even before the report is out, sometimes you have to file in your case and you have to start pursuing. So in the meantime, it's still your case. But one thing which is there is the cases in India, the consumer tribunals are also again very slow. The statute asks them to dispose of the case within 6 months, but practical ground reality, bare minimum it takes a period of at least 2 years, bare minimum for a case to be heard in consumer courts also. So that is again a disadvantage is that is the timeline, but of course they are still much faster than a remedy under the civil court, which in India is much more further. It takes 4 5 years for a civil suit to be disposed. So unfortunately, these are some of the hurdles which the victims will face. These are the hurdles which the lawyers are going to face, who are going to be trying for the witness, who are going to be helping the victims, families get justice, fight in courts, and get compensation. Now, another thing is that this is we are not yet aware that what had happened on the aircraft. There is no preliminary report out. Very unfortunate thing is that this was one of the finest aircraft of Boeing, the 787, which was found in the crash. It was considered one of the safest aircraft and never had an incident before. So another for global aviation also, this is one of the biggest aspect is they want to know what happened in the crash because this is one of the highest selling aircraft of Boeing and this is one of the widely used aircraft by each and every airline around the world. So if there is some inherent error of there is some issue which has to be resolved, it is very important to know that do we have the solution. Now another thing is the liability. Now we are talking about airlines liability, insurance liability. Again, if there is some default in the aircraft or something comes out, you can also along with the airline also make the manufacturer a party to the case. So that is Boeing, which is the company which manufactures the aircraft. Because again, in Boeing globally, there have been a lot of talk. They are not this aircraft, but the other aircraft, which is the 737 Max, which is their one of again the highest selling aircrafts around the world is also a factor of met with many crashes. There were a lot of issues coming regarding the same 787. Also, there were whistleblowers who have come out saying that there were corners cut, safety regulations violated at the time of manufacturing. FAA is in the US looking into it. They have put sanctions on Boeing. Also, they had cut down their production cycles. They were made each and every aircraft was being investigated by them. Some aircraft were there were repairs done, there were recalls done also for some parts in the aircraft.
So
So,
Sarosh, you've convinced me. I'm a victim of the Air India crash, but you've convinced me that I shouldn't do anything and forget about it. It's not worth it. So
it is
let's.
you have to
uh,
understand the practical reality. When you're going in the fight, you need to know what you're fighting for and what it is going to take to get to the ultimate justice. So no, it is very important to understand the system because unless you understand the system and navigate through it, you cannot reach your ultimate goal of getting the compensation. So that's a reality check which we all need to have when we are pursuing the route for
okay.
justice.
Let's see if Shyamli and Pradeep can convince me to not drop my lawsuit, and let's hear from the two of them. Shyamli, you were telling us about Montreal Convention and its applicability. We can't hear you,
I
Shyamli.
had to drop out.
Okay. All
Hello,
right.
can you hear me now? I'm sorry that there's some glitch, there's some problem with the internet. I keep dropping. But I've been like I'm really appreciative of what Mr. Bawa and Mr. Sarosh had to say so far. Even I am agreeing with them that actually litigating the matter is far more difficult and far more you can say tenacious process to get through. But at the same time, if I do have to credit India and even abroad that they brought in such a convention, India became a party to it, it ratified it. Because had there not been the convention,
Maybe you want to turn off your video, Shamli? Maybe then we can hear you.
uh,
Maybe turn off your video.
and for their families or dependents, because there is a provision which was provided by the Montreal.
Okay. Thank you, Shyamli. We have a
Came
hard
with a
time
sole
hearing you.
purpose.
We have a hard time hearing you, Shyamli. So, Ramandeep, any final thoughts on
Okay.
who's responsible, Air India or Boeing, or is there insurance? Is this going to happen through mediation, arbitration? Any final thoughts? Okay. Sarosh, you have any final thoughts? Um,
Fine. Before, of course, we have to pursue the route for justice. We have to fight for the victims. Of course, there are a lot of lawyers here who have to take back from this session that we have had a lot of panelists talk about different aspects of how to deal with it. Oh, one main take is the Montreal Convention, which is there to, as a support mechanism and which is going to be very important and how it works with the Indian law in combination to it. And I think the judicial system in India works. It is not that it is not working. It may be a little slow, but you do get ultimate justice. There are a lot of, we have seen examples from the earlier crash also. Victims have got compensation. We had Yeshwant speak about how we got 7.5 crores compensation along with interest, for a victim. So it is the court's work. The system is there. It might be a little slow, but in conclusion, you will have to pursue it and you will have to, do a lot of research, a lot of thoughts will have to put in. Your legal strategy will have to be worked around a lot of international laws, Indian laws, and combination of both is going to get you the final justice. So that is very important. As a lawyer, as a legal person who's going to guide a victim through this, is very important. And of course, it's going to be very emotionally stressful times for the victims also. They might want to get easy money, maybe take whatever the airlines offer is and get out of it. So you have to be there to understand, guide your client accordingly that what is the best for them and about it. So you have to pursue the route for justice, which is a difficult route in India, but we are lawyers and we are meant, that is why there are lawyers and that is why we are meant to assist the victims or assist our clients to get whatever best possible result for them.
is it possible for Air India to say that, okay, we understand how difficult this entire thing is? We understand that appeals will be filed and Supreme Court and it'll take years and years. We understand that the insurance company will fight, the insurance company will have lawyers. Is it possible for Air India to say, okay, we'll bypass all of this, we'll set up a little office in the Air India headquarters in Mumbai. We will take care of everything. We will fight with our insurance company. We will get you the maximum amount of money possible. And we've decided that we will pay X amount of money, 5 crores per person. Come here, take the money, and sign a piece of paper that you will not file a lawsuit against any consumer protection or appeals or anything. Is it possible for them to bypass all of this?
It's very highly unlikely because what happens is, the insurance contracts also which the airline have with the insurance companies are also pretty complex. In which they have to be, they have to support the insurance companies at all times and render them all possible assistance to fight the claim. They will be also in violation of their own contracts, and these insurance contracts are international insurance contracts. Most of these insurance contracts are reinsured by foreign companies such as Lloyd's. There's no much aviation law or aviation leasing. If you see any aviation dispute contracts, also any Indian carrier signs or India also, they have jurisdictions of London, Singapore. There's nothing in India. Problem is that India, there is no special provision for aviation. There is no special safeguard for aviation. Now we have seen DGCA come out with the Air Seva portal and all that also. But, that is also no effective. There is no specific tribunal or something. The Air Seva portal, you can just file a complaint. What happens is the DGCA forwards the complaint to the airline that please look into it. That's all. And if it doesn't get resolved, then again you have to go back to court and fight. Government has to come on. Maybe government can step in and come out and say that this is bare minimum. These are the standards. At least bare minimum this compensation has to pay. It's something which the government should step in and do, which is there. But from an airline perspective, I don't think voluntarily the airline will pay because they'll be in violation of their own contracts with the insurers. And of course, these insurance contracts are, they've got fleet insurance. So, Air India has one insurance policy for all their aircraft. So they will not want to fight with their own insurance. They'll try to protect them and safeguard them as much as possible. max to max, easily to get compensation, what we can accept is maybe they'll, call you to the office, sit you down, and offer you this Montreal Convention of compensation and tell you to sign on a paper. And they'll say you move it. But now in India, what happens is instead of settling insurance claim, also another problem in India is the victims still go to court saying that "Sir, this is what we have signed into duress and this is not acceptable. I will still fight." So that is also a practical challenge for the company also is there. Because it is advantageous to the victims as such, but but practically that is a practical ground reality over here. So that is another issue which is a serious concern which we'll have to look.
So I think I hope somebody at Air India is listening, but I think and the insurance companies are listening because I think the amounts of money that they can pay to finish this thing before the end of 2025, irrespective of who's at fault, is so little compared to what's happening in the rest of the world that it would benefit the insurance companies and Air India and everybody in between. And it would benefit the country a lot by time not being wasted and the victims getting compensated. Because here's what's happening in the rest of the world. Montreal Convention allows $250,000 upon a death in a crash. Average settlements in, for instance, United States are $2 million when somebody dies in a plane crash. There have been high-profile cases where the damages were between 2 to 4 million, and in some cases, punitive damages of somewhere between $5 to $9 million. The major crashes in the United States, the USA Air Flight 427, the judgments and settlements were between $15 to $25 million. So if somebody is looking at all of this in with Air India and all the insurance companies and the reinsurances, the little amounts of money they can finish all this thing with is peanuts compared to what they pay outside of India.
See, US compensation standards are completely different from what they pay in India. So India is not even near to basic structures of paying compensation. So that is a disadvantage to victims and advantages to these insurance companies and airlines, and they try to take advantage of the situation of the hurdles, which what I just spoke about. There are multiple hurdles which the companies try to cost benefit out of. So that is a very unfortunate situation in our country, and the government policies, the legislations do not support compensation. The courts are very hesitant to give higher compensation. Problem in normal consumer cases also, even normal maybe baggage loss case or something. Although you get pennies in a compensation paid here for some small things are 30, 40, 50,000 by the court. That is not even your amount you spend on litigation. So very unfortunate, but that is the ground reality, and we have to know this air crash is in the modern days. This has happened now. Global legal standards are applicable. India has adopted a lot of laws. Now courts have also become more victim centric. Also, so this is going to be a very a test case to see to what amount of compensations are paid, and this is the one of the few international incidents which is not even in India, but there are various citizens of various other countries also involved. There are various other governments participating. There is the NTSB from the US is participating in the probe because it was the Boeing aircraft from US which they had certified. So the UK agency is also participating. The ICAO was looking into the crash. So this time it could be different. India also has to step up on the global standards. They also have to set a benchmark that Indian aviation is safe. We are saying that India is becoming one of the largest aviation markets, but unfortunately, another issue is the airline monopolies. Two major airlines in India are Air India and Indigo. For international, there is only Air India. We don't have a second international airline because there are other airlines who are flying international flights, but the quantity of the air cards they have or the number of flights is negligible. So they are the sole monopoly. So government is also not taking any harsh action against them because they know that the Indian aviation will get stuck if Air India is grounded. Something drastic is not being. Now, what measures are being taken are interim measures. They've said enhanced safety check. DGCA is inspecting airports. Already on inspection, they have found that there are lapses in safety. There are lapses at the airport. It's very unfortunate that the
You have you have a theory, Sarosh, on what do you think happened to the plane?
we cannot confirm what has happened, but see, only thing which has come out or which is a lot of experts are speaking or technical people speaking is The only possibility of such thing to happen is both engines failing at the same time, because the airlines are designed to fly even take off on one engine. So only thing, and this happened, you have to realize from takeoff it happened in 35 seconds. So from ground to air to so engine failing was just 35 seconds. It could be multiple things, and it has to be the pilots who are flying the aircraft over, also senior pilots, the experienced pilots, from a takeoff, and it couldn't be that the plane was on autopilot or something because it was being takeoff. And in India, there's no autopilot permissible while taking off. The pilot has to control the aircraft when the aircraft are being taken off. So there are standard protocols for flying aircraft in India. So civil aircraft, all commercial airliners have to be flown by pilot. You can't put it in autopilot, or there are not even systems available at Indian airports to guide autopilot for takeoff. Unlike some Western countries or some advanced airports who have some certain facilities for assistance. But another thing to understand is the pilots. The pilots did everything possible. If you see the videos which are circulating, they tried to put the aircraft up. They tried to, but the aircraft just stalled and went down. It was very unfortunate. It landed. It fell into a medical college. The tragedy worsened. When the aggravation happened, it fell down. It was a fell down into a mess, which was a canteen where students used to have their meals over there. And the major thing which has contributed to is you have to understand the aircraft was traveling till London from Ahmedabad. So the fuel on the aircraft was at the full brim because they were just taking off. This incident might have happened when the aircraft was coming back. It might be a lesser explosion or lesser, you know, the post crash thing. So majorly there was a more explosion, there was a lot of fire, a lot of fumes because the amount of fuel in the aircraft. It is estimated to be around 1 lakh liters of fuel, which is, of course, we don't have the exact specs or exact preliminary report. The fuel load also depends on the number of passengers, cargo. It's a very complex scenario. And this aircraft, the 787, which is there, is one of the latest aircraft of going through. It has all the advanced technology, automatics, there's everything, every possible assistance for pilots. There's a lot of technology on board. So we need to
Right.
understand that in spite of all these safeguards being there, such an incident has occurred. So, there that is why the investigation to come out with the right investigation report, come out with the cause of the accident is one of the most important things because this aircraft flies in each and the 787 is one of the most popular aircrafts flying with each and every airline around the world. Of course, with the US, Europe, India, Asia, wherever you travel, you have the 7. All major carriers use the 787. So it is
Yeah.
one of the very important aspects to look into it. Is such a popular aircraft. You have to know the cause. You don't want something to be repeated because of a bad investigation or because the investigation bureau couldn't find. The unfortunate part is you won't believe that till this year, only in March, a black box laboratory was inaugurated by the Indian government. So till now, we are in 2025. So now, this was a year when a black box laboratory was set up in India. We didn't have a black box laboratory. So all the earlier crashes, black box were sent abroad to US or some other places to have investigation done. So this time is
I
the first
wish, I
India.
wish, only thing I wish is that the pilots had one more minute of engine power left. They could make a U-turn. And if they could just make a U-turn, they would have landed without engines, which is possible to land, but they didn't have the power to make a
So the
U-turn.
aircraft, when the aircraft is going above, it didn't have, unless the aircraft is lifted to a particular extent, it doesn't have the glide power. Because, it has to start gliding because you don't understand these are very big aircraft. So they need a
Right.
airlift, there need to be a certain attitude to start gliding. So that is another issue also because of the
Thank
size
you.
of the. So these are wide body. These are one of the biggest aircraft, around the world, passenger segment.
We wish peace and resolution to the family members. Thank you so much, Sarosh, for joining us. Thank you, Shanti and Swati, for helping us put this webinar together. And thank you, all of you listening on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Thank you. We'll see you again shortly. Thank you very much. Thank you.